Hey guys, Kristina here. This is a follow-up process video to my last one, which was for a YouTube video hop show and tell style video. The theme for the July hop was Fly Me to the Moon, and I decided to use a stencil from PM Artist Studio, who are the hosts of the hop. This stencil inspired me to create a door in my journal, which I haven't done for a very long time. I also have this celestial tissue paper from Finnabair, and I am so happy to be using it. I placed down the tissue paper and traced out where I want the door to be. I have an idea to divide the page to have a galaxy along the bottom, so that's why you see me here cutting the paper this way. I don't want to glue the entire sheet down because I prefer to use the inks directly on the paper pages. I find when applying inks on top of things like gesso or matte medium, I don't get a very consistent application. So now that I'm gluing down the tissue paper, you can start to see the page design coming together. I carefully applied the matte medium, avoiding any of the exposed paper pages. You will see in a bit that where some of the glue seeped out, the ink doesn't apply very well there, and I come up with an idea to cover it. It's really good to get to know your supplies. When I started art journaling, I spent a lot of time experimenting. I had a book that was used to see how the products worked together. I would mix things together or apply them on top of each other, then make notes. Experimenting is also a great way to find out what products you like or not like to use, which then helps you to discover your own art style. I chose mixed media paper to create the door because I'll be using sprays and water, so I needed something to hold up to that. When you purchase stencils from PM Artist Studio, you sometimes will get the outer piece to it that it was cut out of. I wanted to utilize that to create the door shape. After I traced out the door shape, I sketched out a frame around it. It doesn't need to be perfect. When cutting the door part out, you will need to keep one side attached. This will act as the hinge for the door. Using an X-Acto blade made this process much easier than scissors. I used a bone folder to create a crease in the paper along the hinge part of the door. This helps with creating a bend in the paper to open the door. Now it's time to use a stencil to create a design on the door. I chose to apply texture paste through the stencil because I imagine this door to have a dimensional look to it. I am using opaque matte texture paste from Ranger. This texture paste does not resist ink sprayed on top, it absorbs the color. It basically acts the same as paper does. Through my experimentations, I have found that texture pastes from different brands react differently. Most will resist ink, and those are better used with acrylic paints. If you are like me and love using wet mediums like sprays, then this texture paste is a good product. Another thing I love doing is using mediums differently than how they are intended to be used. Sprays are meant to be sprayed, right? What if you want control over them and where they get applied on the pages? Sprays are great for a quick coverage or an unintentional look, but to create a galaxy, I wanted control over where the colors go. To create a galaxy look, you commonly see artists using watercolors. What if you don't have any watercolors? Do you need to run out and buy some when you already have sprays and bottles of ink? Sure, if you are wanting to get into authentic watercolor painting, but for this look, no you don't. I'm using a combination of distress oxide sprays and a Lindy Starburst spray. I poured some out onto a palette and apply them with a brush much like you would with watercolor. Because these sprays are water-based, they can dry on the palette and be used on another project later by just reactivating them with water. If you choose to use an acrylic ink, just remember that those are usually permanent and cannot be reactivated on a palette. Just be careful how much product you pour out. Galaxies are super fun to create. They are quite easy, you just need to be careful about your color selection. This is where getting to know your color wheel will help. You want to make sure that when the colors are mixed that they don't create brown, also known as mud. It's also best to use similar color families or colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. If you mix red and green together, for example, they cancel each other out, creating a neutral tone. I did use a black tone ink here, but I was careful not to mix it too much with the other colors. Here's a trick when using water-reactive mediums that are not permanent when dry. I sometimes will use distress microglaze to seal the pages, so I can use other mediums on top. You can apply this product on top of it and it won't disturb the inks. If you try applying something on top like clear gesso, which is also another product used for sealing, it will reactivate and move the inks, destroying what you had created. I decided to use microglaze over the galaxy because I'll be applying white splatters for stars on top, and by sealing the inks, the white splatters will stay white instead of absorbing some of the colors underneath. Another step I took to ensure the white splatters stay bright is using a heat gun to dry them immediately. I love adding paper elements to journal pages like die cuts. Because there is a seam across the spread between the tissue paper and the galaxy, I had an idea to cover it with flowers. So it has a deliberate intention to disguise, but also because it will look pretty. I again apply inks much the same way with a brush, but now adding in a pigment powder from Lindy's that you mix with water. Lindy's makes beautiful shimmery mediums, and I like the combination of them with the chalky matte finish of distress oxides. Another great texture element is using embossing powders. Some are fine, chunky, glittery, and even matte. You can also get creative and mix them together. I used 3 brown tone inks for the door, 2 matte and 1 with a gold shimmer. This is where sprays are used as they're meant to be. It's such a fast way to get the color down on your project. I use another stencil on the back to create a wood grain that you will see when you open the door. I switched to an ink pad to apply through it, which is my favorite way to get a detailed look of the stencil design. This is the part of the journal process where everything comes together. I tend to follow the same steps each time. I want to thank PM Artist Studio again for having me be a part of their YouTube hop. They have a Facebook group called Makers of Mixed Media Art and Artists, so if you would like to check out more on their monthly creative theme prompts, I recommend joining the group. They also have a YouTube channel here. If you are interested in what the other hop participants created for the Fly Me to the Moon prompt, please check out my last video. Their videos are all linked in the description. Now I am adding some final details to the journal spread. This metallic Jelly Roll pen is very sparkly and felt like a perfect addition to use to create some dangly strings with stars. I really enjoyed doodling these, and I highly recommend you trying this out on one of your next journal pages. The other final detail I added was some liquid pearls to the center of the flowers. This is a dimensional paint that is great for adding dots. They do take a bit to fully dry, so if you use them, make sure to keep your journal open for a while or they will smoosh and transfer to the other page. Pigmented waxes work great on textures, so I decided to add one more final touch to the door to give it a bit more shimmer. After all, it is a moon door. Here is a bit of a close-up look to the spread. I really hope you enjoyed this video process. Thank you so much for watching.